Thierry, welcome back to Hungary.
Thank you.
You were here last time in the summer, in summer 23. And since then, a lot of things happened with you. There were elections in the Netherlands. We will talk a lot about this, but maybe the most important events is happened with you physically, because you have been assaulted twice very badly by so-called Antifas or Ukrainian supporter, Ukrainian guy living in Belgium. So what happened with you and how are you? How is your, I would say, physical and mental condition after those terrible events?
Yes, well, thank you, first of all, for having me. It's great to be back in Budapest. I love the city. I love Hungary. And I'm very excited that my book did well. The book was translated, of course, and apparently there's a new edition coming up, so people are reading it, and that's wonderful. In the Netherlands, I got attacked twice in two consecutive events. One was in Flanders, where a guy hit me with an umbrella, quite hard on the head, and a couple of weeks later somebody hit me with a beer bottle on the head as well. So I had head wounds twice, but I was very lucky. I mean, I don't have any lasting physical trouble from it. Some of my friends said there was always something loose in my head, and now it's straightened up again. So they thought I was sharper than ever. So maybe it had some positive effect. But it shows the extent to which it's difficult now to have a free public debate in the Netherlands. And I think it's a general situation in the Western world that there are lots of taboos. There are things that you cannot discuss, things that are outlawed. You're demonized for saying all kinds of things or raising questions about things. So, for example, with regards to the situation in Ukraine, we wish the very, very best, especially for the Ukrainian people who are currently dying by hundreds a day because of this continuing war, and we seek a way out. We seek a way towards peace as soon as possible. So I think it's a very reasonable proposition. There's nothing that we feel against the Ukrainian people as such. It's merely a different philosophical outlook with regards to geopolitics, and that's important to discuss in an open manner in a democracy. And if you cannot do that anymore, and the media, of course, very much contribute to this situation because they make it seem as if all these positions are morally despicable and unacceptable, and you cannot possibly say that, and you are an inhumane human being, and that kind of thing. So that helps to create this atmosphere where some individuals apparently think it's acceptable to use violence, and
I would add, because
I became the victim of that.
The most shocking information which I could see, let's say you have been facing attacks twice. The Ukrainian guy who attacked you in Flanders, which is the Dutch-speaking part of Belgium, he hit you quite badly with this umbrella on your face. Right after you just went to do your conference, you didn't give up on that at that moment. But the attack in Groningen was terrific. It was a 15-year-old teenager. If he didn't smash the bottle this way, but on the side, it would have exploded on your face, literally. But in both cases, the Ukrainian guy was released the next day. The next day. And whereas the Dutch teenager, because 15 years old is somewhere between a kid and an adult already, was released after 2 weeks. So it almost sounds like an invitation to keep on going, because I'm not sure if a FED member would do that to Franz Timmermans, or I don't know, I don't want to name anyone or to invite to any violence, but if a similar thing would happen, that a right-wing guy would throw a bottle, which can be, considering the event itself, it's an attempt of murder, in my opinion. Yeah. And it wouldn't be released after 2 weeks. Where, by the way, is there any procedure ongoing with those two guys who attacked you? What's up with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're raising a very relevant and important point. The guy that hit me in Belgium was released the very next day, meaning he could travel to any other campaign event that I was going to have, because it was in the campaign time. So I was everywhere, across the country. Every day I had 2 or 3 events, so I was all over the place, and it would not have been difficult for him to strike again. And that's very odd. Even if you would have come to the conclusion that you didn't want prosecute him for much more than a couple of weeks. At least keep him detained until the campaigns are over. That's the most obvious thing. With regards to the second thing, that the boys in Groningen in the north of the country, they hit me with a glass bottle. I was also surprised that they were released after 2 weeks. There was a guy in the Netherlands with a torch, a flaming torch, who went up to the house of the Minister of Finance at the time, Minister of Foreign Affairs. Either she switched, I don't know which position she had at exactly that moment, and he is I know who he is because he was also at one of our events once or twice, and he's been on television, so we've seen him a little bit. He was not a member of our party, by the way, but it was just some political lunatic who was completely peaceful and nerdy, and sort of, he had his party called Jesus is Alive, and he was speaking with God all the time, and just a little bit of weirdo with completely peaceful intentions, but weird to come to somebody's house with a torch, right? And he wanted to talk, but he got convicted for 8 months in prison. He spent 8 months in prison, so he was convicted for more. He spent 8 months in prison. Whereas these guys that have actually perpetrated violence against me, they were away for a couple of days. That's very odd. I completely agree with you. It's relevant to ask these questions. We see that the politicization of the juridical branch across the Western world, I think the kind of the procedures that Donald Trump is receiving are clearly indications of politicized legal procedures, politicized legal branch, and I'm sure the same is happening here in Hungary. It's happening across the board, and it's very dangerous for democracy. It's very dangerous for a level playing field if the judicial branch, the judiciary, becomes political.
And so it happened during the campaign, and everyone, or almost everyone who is a little bit following politics in Europe or in the world knew about the great victory of Geert Wilders.
Yeah.
Who got, if I'm correct, 24% of the votes. Interestingly, I have to inform our audience, in the Netherlands you have a very particular election system because you have 150 MPs. You have only a list election, so a proportional system, but without limitations. So a party with 0.6% can get 1 MP, which is in the same time leading to a very interesting democratic representation of all opinions. The negative aspect of this system is that, of course, it's much more difficult to establish coalitions for ruling the country, because always at least 3 or 4 parties are required to make a government. So Mr. Wilders won. For you, the result was not that good because your party was started in 2017, if I'm correct. You grew up very fast, and then you had a certain decline in terms of votes, at least, because interestingly, you didn't have much members when you grew up to 15% and won the elections, the provincial elections in 2019. Since then, the percentage of your party severely declined for several reasons we will talk about. But the party members grew up as no one else. Because interestingly, you are leading a party which has now 3 seats out of 150 in the Dutch parliament.
About 2.5%.
2.5%. And at the same time, you have the biggest party in terms of numbers, with over 60,000 active members of the Forum for Democracy. So how on earth is it possible to explain this extremely contradictory situation?
Yes, it's also mysterious to me. I mean, we did lose a significant amount of voters to Geert Wilders, who was presented very clearly in the final days of the election, which are always decisive days, of course, as the potential great winner and the one who could beat the left and that kind of thing. So you get this run-up to either candidates on the left or on the right. And that definitely cost us a couple of seats. We had been very stable on something between 5 and 7% for over 3 years in the polls. But still, I admit it's not an awful lot. And I mean, I'd like to blame in part the media for this, because we have not been able to get any platform at all for years. But it's also probably because we are an avant-garde party. We are the we are the innovators of the political landscape, and that's always a relatively smaller group of people that would be attracted to that. But those people are fanatic. They are devoted to it. They are very serious about it, and that's why they become members. So, in a way, I think it's a normal, it's a natural situation for a really avant-garde party like ours, that we have relatively limited numbers of seats in the representative bodies, but we have a very high turnout of people to our events, relatively high membership figure, and so on. I do expect us to grow again, but probably not to the number of seats that somebody like Wilders has gotten in the last elections. I don't think we were very likely to get something like 25%, but I think we do have a potential for growth, and we can get to 10% or something like that, which is about right for an innovative party.
Sure. If I'm correct, the blackout around you started by the end of 2020, when you stood up very radically against the COVID measures.
Very radically, yeah.
Well, radically in the sense that you are looking at the root of the issue.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, I would have used the word extremely, but I used on purpose radically, because I think it's extremely important to make a strong difference between radicalism and extremism. I know it's usually those two words are merged into each other, whereas they can express extremely different concepts and realities and mindsets.
Yeah.
If you would have avoided to get into the COVID issue topic, especially so radically, do you think you would have avoided the blackout you faced since then?
It certainly played an important role in the way I was marginalized in the media and everything. But I also think that my position on the situation in Ukraine has contributed to this marginalization of me and my party. I also think that the fact that we are not merely a political party in the technical sense, but a much broader movement, makes the journalists very uneasy, and they feel that we are not playing their game. Which is true. I mean, we have our own podcasts, we set up our own school, we have our network of entrepreneurs and lawyers and fiscalists and builders and painters and, car repairmen. We are really trying to build our parallel system, and that's that's annoying the journalists, because we are less dependent on them. We're not playing their game. So there's definitely this ideological element. That's certainly true. COVID is important. Ukraine, Putin, NATO, and all that is important. But the other element is that I wouldn't say we're looking down on parliamentary life, but we are regarding it with a certain relativism, with a smile, the way a parent looks at his child playing. It's children's game, parliamentary life, because they're all just trying to be witty and debating each other and blah blah blah, and spending hours and hours and hours on end in their suits, not achieving anything, but pretending to be achieving anything. And that's the game that the media want parliamentarians to play in their talk shows. Like, he's saying it. Oh no, he's saying that. And if you're sort of, come on, this is not the real thing. We're doing that. We want to talk about it. Then you're disrupting their entire life. Their raison d'être. They don't see why they would exist anymore. They feel deeply uneasy about that. And I think that's also a reason for them not to invite me anymore.
Well, when they do invite you, I believe that if you would have grown up, been active in an English-speaking environment, you would be a world celebrity for your troll behavior. We had a discussion just before this conversation, which is recorded, because I clearly remember. We will edit it for our audience. When you called a non-binary, well, then I don't know, person, because he looks like a man, but he doesn't want to call himself a man, and you pretend not knowing what is that, what is meaning non-binary. And
Wat is non-binair?
Weet u niet?
Nee.
Kent u Google? Google.nl.
Dat ken ik wel.
Non-binair, dat is een...
Moet ik het nu even googlen zelf?
Ik kan het doen, maar non-binair kan het ook wel uitleggen. Dat is een genderidentiteit die tussen man en vrouw of erbuiten staat. Dat valt buiten het binaire van man en vrouw.
Oké. Maar ben je een man of een vrouw?
Ik ben non-binair.
Maar hoe kan dat nou?
And then the audience is, because it was, you had a lot of young people around you questioning the politicians. There was you and the D66, a left-wing liberal party, in debate. And then they ask you, have you ever met a single homosexual person? You seem so retarded. And you're showing, yeah, my opponent is probably gay and so on.
Kent u een homoseksueel persoon? Heeft u een homoseksueel persoon in uw omgeving?
Daar heb je er een.
In uw persoonlijke omgeving.
And then the question is, this Thierry Baudet, which is now a pure troll, when from the small content I am able to reach in Dutch or with English translations. My question is have you always been like this personally in politics, or did you decide to change your attitude after the blackout? So, I mean, have you always been like this? Because you're extremely unusual by behavior as well.
Yeah, no, I've always been like this, and I've been very spontaneous, and I've been playing with the media and with everything from the very beginning. I was in one of my first months in Parliament. I was wearing a military attire to show that we weren't supporting our troops enough, and we were doing all kinds of great things. But there's a new undertone with regards to me now, which is that I think they're no longer enjoying my jokes anymore in the media, and I don't particularly know why. Actually, I wouldn't be able to answer all the questions with regards to their behavior towards me. I'm just acting the way I want to act, and as an expression of what I believe, and I think I'm very sincere, and this is what I think needs to be said, needs to be done, and I just hope that more and more people will see that and will support me for it, and that's all I can do.
You spoke about your political party, the Forum for Democracy, as a human community, as an avant-garde structure and whatsoever, and you mentioned your economical network. Can you be more, you building parallel society or whatsoever?
Yeah.
Can you give concrete examples to the audience?
Sure.
Because it sounds in the same time very interesting but very theoretical. We don't get what is behind it.
We've built an app that you can download on your iPhone, which works just like Google Maps. So basically, you get a Google Maps, but all the services that are offered there, restaurants, cafes, garages for your car, building companies, whatever you're searching for, it's only members of the party. So you'll get thousands and thousands of companies that will offer whatever you need, holiday homes, real estate advisors, bankers that can help you with your investments, whatever. So we have got this entire network. People can apply for jobs there. There are job vacancies. They can exchange goods. So secondhand, if you want to sell this table, you can put a picture on it and you can sell it to other people that are members of the party. So the idea is that if we are declining towards a world where there's a massive state on the one hand that is not to be trusted because it's a quasi-communist construction that seeks to take away our profits and take away our money and take away our freedoms on the one hand, and on the other hand our society is falling apart because of mass immigration and we become low trust communities. We become become atomized and falling apart. We need to recreate a high trust community. And that's the idea. And I would love for a group in Hungary, for example, and also in other parts of Europe, to join us. The technology is open for you guys. I've offered it already several times. If you are willing to share this app with your membership base or with your groups and networks and lobbies, and to add all kinds of Hungarian entrepreneurs and job possibilities and whatever on this network, then we can really create this pan-European network of like-minded people that are starting to work together with each other and create a social-economic relationship, which of course is much more impactful in your life, in the everyday life of the everyday citizen than going to the ballot box once in every 4 years. That's a very abstract thing. You have to go to fill in a form, and that's your vote. Okay, and then you go home, and what? You're surrounded with liberals again. You're surrounded with globalists. You have to conform to their ideas at the working place. You can't access your holiday home without showing a sign of your vaccination. That's the reality, the everyday reality of people. And if we want to really create an alternative for them, that's not just speaking in parliament and saying, oh, vote for me and everything will be better, then we have to create something at the social economic level. And that's what we've done. And it's massively successful. Our app is being used by thousands of people every day in the Netherlands. I personally, my wife and I have used it. We switched homes about a year ago. We've used it for literally everything that we needed for the renovation of our house, for the painting of the house, for the decoration of the garden, to buy a new car. We had all kinds of services for tax, the filling in of tax forms, and so on and so forth. We use it almost every day, and it's wonderful because you can feel that you're working with people that are sympathetic towards you, that have broadly the same outlook about life. And that's, if we are conservatives, I think we are communitarians. We are in favor of real, tangible communities. Then we must create something like this and live by it. And that's also the idea of something else that I've been spending a lot of time developing, which is a company I've set up that translates as honest food. It's eerlijk eten in Dutch, honest food. And we take food directly from Dutch farmers. We're focusing especially on meat because we think it's very important that people continue to eat meat, and we believe very much.
You don't want to eat bugs?
We don't want to eat bugs. We believe very much that the globalist elites that we're ultimately fighting, they envisage a future of mankind where we're either vegetarians or we're eating insects or we're eating fabricated food. Computer-generated, printed steaks and things like that, and we don't want that. We want to remain part of the organic circle of life, and so we set up this network of farmers, Dutch farmers that have cow and other livestock, and they have proper, circumstances to live in, and they get good food, they're grass-fed, and they don't get hormones and other weird stuff injected in them, and we bring it directly to people's homes. And then we have all this website where we have all these tips to improve your cooking and those kind of things. And the philosophy behind that is I think is very profound. It's not just to support the farmers, which has been a massive political issue in the Netherlands for years, but it's also to support people to get proper food for a reasonable price, because we are cheaper and better than the supermarket. So if you buy for €100, let's say, meat from us, you would have to spend €120, €130 in the supermarket, and the quality that we offer is infinitely better than the supermarket. So it's a real economic viable business proposition that we're offering. But third, what we get back from our customers, the feedback is that, all of a sudden the family is having dinner again at the dinner table instead of just ordering pizza and watching TV. So there's also a social element to it when people are cooking again and they're trying new tastes and they're trying new dishes and they're discussing this and I didn't like the Thai sauce or this or that. There's this really communal element in it, and I think that's the road that we have to take as conservatives, as radicals, as you say. Sure, we must continue to oppose it in an intellectual manner, in a political manner, but we also must do something in our everyday life to change it. Otherwise, it's all going to remain feudal.
Before going back to the topic of the farmers, which is a topical issue, well, nowadays in many countries in Europe, because now there is the German, the French farmers are angry in the eastern part of the European Union. They have been angry for months because of the illegal introduction of Ukrainian products on the markets instead of just transit as it was promised. And we had the case in the Netherlands a year ago with the so-called Azot policy. It's a very important topic, but I want before to go back to another topic you mentioned, that you have the idea to be communitarian. I have been a guest of the gala of the youth section of your movement, and very interestingly, whereas you sometimes you made a few scandals in the Dutch parliament because you are not exactly denying the ethnic dimension of a nation, I could see that there is not so many, but a certain number of young people supporting your movement who are from non-European background, who are from immigrant background. I could remember a lady with Moroccan roots, a young guy of Tatar origin. I would even mention that the leader of your youth organization is an incredibly dynamic lady of Kurdish origin. So how is it possible that whereas you stand radically and truly on the fact that a nation also has an ethnic background, I can see a certain number of people who have origins from the non-European immigration being happily and devoutly your supporters? How do you mix those two informations?
Yeah, well, I would like to add that I myself am not of entirely European origin either. I've got Indonesian roots, which come from the Dutch colonies, of course, where my family was active the European part of my family was active as colonizers, and then intermarried, and hence the Indonesian part in our bloodline. So I think it's an empirical observation that these mergers exist, and that it's very, very possible to support and love the traditional makeup of European society. Nevertheless, I don't see any real contradiction in that. Perhaps even on the contrary, if you're able to look at it from an external perspective, you see the wonder of European society and civilization, and you wish to preserve that. And I think it's a very natural and an obvious thing that you cannot have absolutely zero immigration or absolutely zero intermingling of nations and people and cultures and ethnicities and religions and so on. But at the same time, to wish to preserve it in a more or less traditional way is entirely natural, and I don't see anything I don't see anything problematic in that. It's odd to me that it's become so taboo to discuss it in that manner. If you are in Japan is ethnically incredibly homogenous, of course, but you're there as a white man or whatever. You might appreciate Japanese society very much and be very happy that you've been welcomed, but at the same time be very hesitant to allow, I don't know, 25 million Europeans into Japan. It's not unnatural, I think, to be supportive of the host country that you're in, and I think that's what many of our youth feel as well. They might have different ethnic backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, even religious backgrounds that may diverge greatly. But what they have in common is that they love the Netherlands, they love our traditions and history, and they wish to preserve that, and that includes limiting immigration.
Another topic which is extremely important is will there be ever a new Dutch government? Because Wilders won the elections. He got 37 seats.
Yeah.
Very high results, historical result for him. But it's not
Yeah,
enough.
my answer is going to surprise you and maybe disappoint you, because it doesn't matter. Maybe there will be a government, a coalition government with Geert Wilders, in which case it will be shown that even if you win the elections and you form a government, you cannot really change anything. Or there will not be a coalition government with Geert Wilders, in which case it's also being shown that even if you win the elections, you cannot really change anything. The point is that, and that's the point I've been trying to make ever since I entered politics, we are dealing with a cartel. And it's not merely a cartel of political parties that will always have at least 50, 60% of all the votes. So they will always have a majority, solid majority, because they're spread out on what they call left and the right. And, they're everywhere. They're the mainstream political establishment. But also we're dealing with a cartel that is composed of the media, the universities, the bureaucratic class, the big financial institutions, and a few other big players that are all, roughly speaking, in agreement about the direction that we need to take as a society. And that's what's being manifested at places like Davos with the World Economic Forum, where the big corporations and the big government leaders come together and they have a consensus-driven conversation about the sustainability goals, the Agenda 2030, the climate change policies that need to be implemented, the inevitability of migration and the future of Europe will be diverse and so on, the inevitability of supranational legislation and multinational organizations taking over more and more aspects of our lives, the necessity of censorship on social media, and so on and so forth. The importance of COVID measures, the importance of the war in Ukraine. So these are the sets of beliefs that are shared by the elites in the Western world. And
only in the Western world? Only in the Western world.
Well, this is an interesting. This is the one of the great questions, I think, with regards to the rise of the BRICS countries. Are they merely presenting some kind of economic alternative to the transatlantic predominance, or are they also going to present a truly different outlook on politics and on all these themes? That's a very interesting and exciting question, but that it's maybe a little bit too early to say whether or not. But in any case, it is the consensus of the Western the Western elites and possibly the elites of many other parts of the world as well. Let's leave that open for the moment. But the point being that if that is the case, then you are, even if you win an election by a landslide, if you're Donald Trump entering the White House and you have a full mandate, you can appoint and fire any government ministers you'd like. You can replace 5,000 of the top civil servants in all the ministries that you want. You can you can even start a war if you like. You're the supreme commander of the American army. You have genuine power, you would say, right, on paper, but still you wouldn't be able to do anything because you're facing this massive conglomerate of the permanent political class that will either simply not execute your orders, or the judicial branch will say no, or big investment companies will lower your credit rating, or the donors of the senators that will stand for re-election will withdraw from supporting their re-election campaigns. There's this, or all the media will turn against you. There's this wide array of levers of power, of elements that in their totality are responsible for the course that our societies are taking. That I think. Merely achieving political success is just not going to change anything durable about that. And that is why I set out to create a societal movement, a cultural movement, much more than merely a political movement. That's why I think we have to talk about the cultural dimension. We have to set up educational institutions. We have to create an entirely new generation of youngsters that will go into business, that will go into government, that will go into universities, and gradually, slowly try to turn that development around, and if we don't succeed, to create something new entirely. So there are quite significant numbers of people that are part of our movement that are now emigrating. They're emigrating into, for example, Paraguay. They're building very interesting, houses and sort of villages there to live. There are people that have moved to Portugal. There are quite a number of people that have moved to Hungary, by the way. And they're doing that not just to escape taxation and COVID regulations and so on, but they are doing that because they believe that we are that we really have to recreate something new entirely, because the world as we're living in is so sick that cannot be cured. It cannot be repaired because of the elites, because of their convictions, the big banks, big technology, the big pharmaceutical companies, the military-industrial complex, all of that it's so powerful and so knit together that there's no way to turn it around anymore. I don't know for sure that we can turn it around, but I'm living with the hope that we can, while also preparing for the worst with our app and our parallel society. Because I think while we try to change the political superstructure of our societies, we should start with rebuilding our own society every day. And so I'm betting on two horses at the same time. But to come back to your original question and my answer, the most important thing for people to realize, I feel, is that it ultimately doesn't really matter what happens at the political level, at the national political level, that is. So if the victory of Russia in Ukraine is clearly announced and NATO will fall apart as a consequence of it, that could trigger a fundamental change, for example. That is one of those major geopolitical events that could trigger such a thing. If Donald Trump is elected and he declares that Bitcoin is now legal tender in the US, for example, it could happen. It's possible. That could trigger a major development. If the BRICS countries have a collective declaration that they do not believe that climate change is man-made and a problem, and that fossil fuels are not scarce, and that we do not need to have any climate policies or sustainability policies. That and just withdraw from the Paris treaties entirely. Those things could really trigger something very big. But I'm very skeptical about the possibilities for national political leaders to do anything about the overarching structure that is already holding our several nations in a deadly grip. Even the United States, I mean, it's very difficult for a president of the United States really to change something durably.
You mentioned Dutch people living to this or that country, living abroad. Well, it just reminded me that one of the most incredible colonial adventure, the South African, was built out of a few thousand Dutchmen, including with some French, I may add, since you have some French origin and I am French.
English came.
Then the English came, but yeah, the Dutch people should definitely be known for at least two things. Not for the tulips and the windmills, but for being pioneers and farmers. By the way, the Dutch-speaking white people in South Africa are called the boers.
Yes.
The farmers, literally. So the pioneers, I invite our audience who who eventually would forget about it, to just check map the size of the Netherlands, so back in time the United Provinces, and the size of the colonies they could manage. I mean, compared to France or to Spain, it's really gigantic what you could control with such a tiny and small country. I mean, we forget to which extent, because if we see the map of Netherlands, it seems like a normal country, but when you cross it, you realize that half of the country, which seems to be on the lands, is underwater. So you everything is small in the Netherlands. I have to say, for me, it's a bit hard when I'm there, because I feel like it's too small for everything. But it forced you to be to develop any kind of tactics to figure out how to solve the issues on a small territory. And you're a nation of pioneers, which is maybe not a surprise that such a, in the same time, amazing and crazy movement as yours grew up in the Netherlands. I'm not surprised. On the other hand, you're a nation of farmers. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. And right now there has been this farmers issue in the Netherlands, which was maybe the beginning of the wave, then later on followed by Eastern Europe, Germany, France, and so on, due to the Azot policy. So could you remind us exactly what is this crazy idea? Once I spoke with Frederick Johnson, one of your MPs, and he told me basically the basic idea is just to replace farmlands and to build up houses for the migrants, and all this thing is done in the name of climate policies. So what's going on? To which extent they are ready to, your elites are ready to destroy the strongest point of the Dutch economy?
Yes, well, there are lots of questions here in this major question. I think the answer, first of all, why is this happening? Why are they destroying this very important element of our economy? It's because they are not answerable to the Dutch people, and they're not acting in the interest of the Dutch people. That's not the point of the policies that we're seeing. It's not been the point of the policies regarding European unification. The euro currency is in no way in the interest of the Dutch economy, or of whichever economy. Mass immigration is in no way in the interest of the European nations, and so is are the climate change policies and the removal of the farmers from their land. It's serving an entirely different agenda, and that's what our national politicians are doing, who are indeed puppets. They're puppets of a globalist power structure, and they are simply executing the script that has been written for them. And that's also why I think my book on COVID was important because what I describe as an insider, being the only elected politician in the Western world to have opposed every element of the COVID policies, is that these policies were, on the one hand, so irrational that it's just absolutely inconceivable that they were genuinely believed by the people that executed them. But second is they were implemented across the board. They were implemented in Italy, in France, in Spain, in Germany, in Hungary, in the Netherlands, in Britain, in America, all over the place. Therefore, and it is simply a logical conclusion that anyone should come to, therefore, they were being decided at a different level. We are not being governed from the national level. And that explains why we are seeing all these policies that are not good for the national level and the people at the national level. They are good for the big investors, the big corporations, the people that are having a plan of turning us all into subjects in a new world order. That's what they call the Great Reset. That's what the Agenda 2030 is. It is the establishment of a supranational world government with us as the subject being very dependent, not on our own food production, but on multinational food production corporations, international trade, and that's why the land in Ukraine is so important to them, because they're buying up, because that's where they can grow their crops again, and then move them to the Netherlands, where we have disowned the farmers. That's the goal. That's the agenda. And to come back to make maybe the connection to your first point about the pioneers and the Dutch history, I feel that we're further from our origins in that sense than we've ever been. We're disowning the farmers, and we've forgotten all about our history of self-sustaining, of sovereignty, of pride of our nation, of conquest, of expansion. And that's very sad. And that's obviously a constructed destruction, as it were, if that is proper English, a constructed destruction by the ideology of cultural Marxism, which has been imposed on practically all of our nations ever since the end of the Second World War, and we're still suffering from it.
You seem to have very negative perspectives for the upcoming years and decades. At least you don't sound extremely. You seem in the same time very energetic, but not exactly ultra optimistic. In the eastern part of the European Union, we came out of socialism 30 years ago, so we usually have on many topics different approaches, different life experiences. Just as an example, in Western Europe, what is very trendy among many circles is survivalism, like going back to grow again your potatoes, and this kind of stuff to survive in case of crisis, which is in eastern part of the European Union. It sounds funny because, in fact, we never went out from the system where we still have to grow up our vegetables in the garden in order to have enough food, because the salary is not sustaining us enough. But despite the differences which you could observe by yourself, you went so many times to Hungary for the last 10 years. What kind of message of hope would you like to address to the Hungarian people? Because I know that despite your very pessimistic previsions on a potential future, in the deep of yourself, you're somebody full of hope and light. So what is your message of hope for the Hungarians?
Well, we should connect with each other and live the life that we believe is the kind of life that we want to live, with our parallel structures and our ability to not comply with everything that's being imposed on us. So remember who the ones were that still allowed you into their place when you were not vaccinated. Remember who the people are that are listening to alternative news sources. Remember who the people are that support you in difficult times, and connect with each other. And I think it is still possible to live a decent life, a life worth living. And I think that ultimately any ideological system will be facing the harsh realities of real life and will not be able to sustain itself infinitely. But I think the human spirit is what we should search for, and it's in that sense it's a great opportunity to reinvent freedom, to reinvent the independence of thought amidst all the propaganda and all the lies and all the censorship. There is this element in our being that when challenged in such a way, we discover who we really are. And that's certainly what happened to me. I discovered who I really was during COVID, because it would have been so easy to just go along. But I felt it was more important to speak the truth, to speak out, than to be part of whatever system was trying to get me to comply with all these stupid rules and regulations. And so, well, one of the things, I think it's a time of challenge, but therefore also a very beautiful time. And my relations with people have deepened tremendously. The old, let's say, populist right-wing coalition that was sort of in the making when, Trump was elected, and then you had Vox in Spain and Marine Le Pen in France and this, and then everyone's like, okay, we're sort of, and Boris Johnson in Britain, okay, these are our friends, sort of. And then they turned out to be just as much part of the same establishment, but simply a different sub-branch of it. And that has really, so it's slashed apart the populist right-wing coalition that we thought there was, but then something new was created. And that's the current, that's what we now call the anti-globalists. And I think it's fascinating to see how this will play out. But I am grateful for all the hardship that we have encountered in our lives, because it has made my contact with people much more real, and the kind of friendships that we're building are much more fundamental. So in that sense, I think it's a very beautiful time. There's no more bullshit. No more Mr. Nice Guy. No more. This is which side are you on? That it's very clear now.
What you say reminds me of the words of the French philosopher who was a full Marxist, but he said one verse which were very true, which sound crazy. I couldn't understand them until 2020, 2021. Jean-Paul Sartre said that we were never as free as during the German occupation. It sounds crazy to say that. Because for France it was a very traumatic period of time. Of course, for Hungarians, they have been occupied for such a long time that they wouldn't understand to which extent it was traumatic for the French, those 4 or 5 years of occupation. And when I was a teenager, I couldn't understand what the hell does this sentence means. To be free, whereas you're occupied by a foreign army of a totalitarian regime, what the hell is that? And in fact, during COVID, I understood that I have never been as free as I was during that time, because I didn't want to obey certain rules. I couldn't feel comfortable with them. And the freedom which I took at that moment was real, eventually costly sometimes, annoying, but not without consequences, but it was real freedom. And I was also thinking back in this time that sooner or later, with a few guys who wanted to stay humans during this time and not hide at home behind mask or this kind of strange things.
Yes.
I was thinking it's like during the very dark times of Stalin, crazy times of the USSR. Yeah, but later on, humankind will prevail again.
Yeah.
And until that, we have to survive somehow
Yeah.
and keep the light within us. Maybe
Yeah,
this-
and it's beautiful that we're all experiencing that in different parts of the world. That we're having this kind of conversation now. I think that is we didn't have that a couple of years ago.
no,
Didn't exist.
no, we were just hoping to
Yeah,
change a few
wind
things in the
power
world.
and then be home before Christmas. That's it. Boom. But now,
Thierry Baudet, we could keep on going for hours, but
okay.
our dear audience, we cannot go more than 1 hour, but we will invite you again in Hungary, so we will keep on going for sure. But
Thank you.
Thank you for today interview.